What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Yesterday, I told you guys that we had something devastating that happened in Canada to talk about, that it was not a lie. Things are about to get real nasty in Canada. If you've been following what's been happening overseas, when you think about the EU, when we talk about Germany, there was an influx for a long time of immigration. And a lot of people now in places like the UK are starting to stand up to that and saying, look, we're overrun here. Enough is enough. We can't do it anymore. It's absolute chaos when you look at the crime that's hit the streets, just like Canada. In fact, a former Prime Minister Liz Truss warned Cian Bexty back at Donald Trump's inauguration. Mark Carney bankrupted the Bank of England. He's going to do the same if he's given the job to be Prime Minister of Canada. You're going to end up just like England if you elect him to be your Prime Minister. Well, the Brantford Boomer and all of his buddies put their elbows up and they voted Mark Carney in. And what's it getting us? Surprise, surprise, folks. Things are about to get real nasty for Canadians. CTV coming out with an article saying the worst cuts in modern history. Report warns of cuts of liberal or public service for Liberals to meet campaign promise. Now, people saying, well, these are jobs. This is overinflated government jobs. What's the problem with cutting those? We have too much government. We do. I'm going to cover this, but I'm going to tell you that this is straight out of the WEF playbook. This was part of the plan. This was always part of the plan, and things are about to get real nasty in Canada. So stick with me on this because this leads into where our problems are just beginning. As this says, the Liberal government's plan to find billions of dollars in operating efficiencies would require a 24% cut in public service spending and devastate the federal government, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Prime Minister Mark Carney's campaign platform included savings from increased government efficiency with $6 billion in savings in 2026-2027 and $13 billion a year in 2028-2029. The government promised $130 billion in new measures during the election campaign, including cutting the lowest marginal tax rate from 15% to 14%, boosting defense spending, and balancing the government's operating budget. You guys remember all those promises? Well, this is where it's all going to come from, but it's not at the same time. A new report from Canada Centre for Policy Alternatives, written by economist David McDonald, says 13, I thought there was a point in there, $13 billion in savings will be mostly in personal expenditures in non-defense departments, amounting to a 24% cut in government spending. If the Prime Minister follows through on his election promise, Canada's federal public service will undergo the worst spending cuts in modern history, the report says. That will inevitably diminish the quality of public services, as if they weren't bad enough already. The Liberal Party platform said that the party was committed to capping, not cutting, public service employment. You can't have it both ways. The platform promised a reduction in the use of external consultants and using artificial intelligence to enhance government productivity. That's not what's going to happen, and I'm going to paint that picture for you in a second. I just want to cover our bases here. McDonald says Canada's pledge to boost defense spending to 2% of the GDP likely exempts the department from spending cuts, meaning spending reductions will need to come from the $89 billion in operating expenditures in other departments. McDonald says cutting contracting out would result in $1.2 billion in savings, and almost all cuts to get $13 billion in savings will be on staffing expenditures. Cuts at this level wouldn't be capping hiring, finding efficiencies using AI, or not replacing retiring workers. For cuts this deep, it would require across-the-board losses in jobs and major service reductions. In other words, if it proceeded, it would represent a major disruption to federal public services and would rival the 18.9% cut in operational expenditures of Paul Martin's 1995 budget as the most extreme budget slashing in Canada's history. Cuts of this size and restricted in these ways are clearly not feasible. This is the big problem, and this is the issue that we run into. Mark Carney's either promising the world or he doesn't know what he's doing. I'd say he's doing a little bit of both. In an interview on News Talk 560 CFRA's The Morning Rush with Bill Carroll, McDonald said that the proposed spending reductions are likely far too big to be implemented without major impacts on services. Again, as if we already didn't need that. We often go through these cycles where government expands to fill a need. There were long waits at passport offices. You couldn't get anybody on the phone at Revenue Canada. You go on a big hiring binge to fill the staff to try to fulfill these needs. And now we're at a high point in the cycle where you may have to actually go through enough staff to deal with the need. And you say, we've got too much staff, let's cut the staff, McDonald said. I think at this point, we're at the high point of that cycle where you think, oh, we can get efficiencies and you can cut a whole bunch of staff and there's an impact on service. It may take a year or two to bubble up to the political level. McDonald says that the report looks at the biggest item for savings in the Liberal platform. Last month, the parliamentary budget officer said the government would need to cut the size of the federal public service to implement its campaign promises and respect its fiscal bottom line. That's not what they're going to do. They're quoted here to say there were big promises made during the campaign, but the real test comes after the implementation of these measures. In the campaign, the government promised to increase national defense spending, for example, $30 billion over a number of years, but it could choose to take a slightly different path, which would allow the government to post deficits that are aligned with its election pledges without cutting the public service, Yves Giroux told CTV News on Power Play. But it would require reducing the speed at which it implements its programs. If the government really wants to implement its program as outlined in the campaign and respect its fiscal bottom line, that is also indicated in the campaign. It would mean reducing the size of public service rather than just capping its growth. Here's the kicker, folks. Here's where it all changes. None of this is going to happen. You're going to see this 24% cut in government spending, but these jobs will not be removed. If you follow what happened in the EU, if you follow what happened in Germany, this is the exact same thing. This is what Liz Truss warned us about. Mark Carney will remove those positions and then fill them with non-Canadian-born residents, the immigrants, those who came over to leech off our system. When you look at what happened in the EU, you watch Germany, step for step, this is the same pattern. Mark Carney's failed experiment with the EU on metals came down collapsing. His trade deals with the U.S. have faltered. As Liz Truss warned, this is the beginning of him bankrupting Canada. This is the beginning of him siphoning out Canada's banks for globalization. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. Again, if you go to what happened in the EU, when there was a mass flood of immigration, when people were being what they quote as replaced, this is how Mark Carney does it. He's following the same blueprint. And anybody who wants to say, Fringe, it's not that bad, keep your eyes open. Watch what happens. Watch as this moves forward. Our country is about to topple. Our banks are about to become obsolete. Our dollar value is about to plummet worse than it ever has. Our deficits are going to grow exponentially. Canada, ladies and gentlemen, is in deep, deep trouble. The patterns have already spoken for themselves. Canadians should have taken Liz Truss's warning from the beginning. And while we're here for the ride, we'll just see where it ends up. But my bets are that we're going to do the exact same thing as what happened in Germany and the EU. The question is, will Canadians revolt? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. They seem to be content with paying taxes until they die. That's just the way it is. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think that this is following the same patterns? Do you think we're about to be replaced? What do you think is going to happen to our services as they get cut? Do you plan on getting a passport before that happens? Do you anticipate long wait times to get a hold of government officials like Revenue Canada? Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you hit that button, hit the bell for notifications. Join me live here on the channel each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where I sit down with the beautiful Mrs. Fringe. We talk about everything that happened this week in Canadian politics, everything we know that's coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A outside of making these videos. I look forward to chatting with you guys each and every Friday night. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you this Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.